Hello and welcome to Beyond the Index, a brand new 6-part video series which serves as your strategic compass for navigating today's fast-moving world of B2B. This series is powered by Dentsu B2B's brand new 5th iteration of the Superpowers Index. This is the largest global study of B2B buying behavior, bringing insights from over 16,000 B2B buyers across 35,000 brand experiences to help us understand what it really takes to win in B2B. Beyond the Index takes a deeper dive into key topics with experts from across our business and leaders from the B2B industry. I'm Jonathan. I'm a managing partner, integrated client lead with Dentsu B2B. I've seen the conversation around influence in B2B develop over the last few years, and it's really gaining exciting momentum. Our latest data, Superpowers data, shows that it's one of the key opportunity areas in B2B marketing, and that's why I'm thrilled to be joined by two influencers in their own right, absolute experts in the field, to talk about the influence opportunity and some of the imperatives for success. So I'm pleased to introduce Julie Chadwick, Managing Director, Dentsu Influence UK and EMEA, and Joel Harrison, Founder and Ambassador, B2B Marketing. Welcome both.
Thank you.
We're going to get straight into it. So every year, we rank 30 decision drivers by what makes the biggest difference to B2B buyers. And every year we see some really big, major swings. The only constant over the last 3 years is the number one difference between winning and losing, and that is trust. When seeking out that trust and authenticity, we're seeing in our latest data that almost 60% of B2B buyers are consulting experts and influencers as part of their buying journey. And they're seeing influencers having a growing impact on the brands they engage with. So clearly, influencers are now being looked to as key trusted sources and voices across the B2B buying journey. So the first question to you, Joel. B2B buyers are seeking trusted relationships. How can B2B influencer strategies build and sustain trust in an era that arguably is riled with skepticism right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of skepticism, isn't there? We've all changed in our willingness and ability to engage in a neutral way. And I think just to talk about some drivers of this, I mean, as you say, there's a geopolitical aspect to that. We won't get too much into that. Populist politicians promising things, cashing in on the dissatisfaction. Disintermediation is something that I feel very strongly as a recovering print journalist. That actually that whole layer of media that we used to trust to help us sort through things is really powerful. AI, then obviously the kind of the deluge of content, of average content that's coming out through AI, and then things like avatars, you don't know quite what to trust and what not to trust. So what it means is you don't really know where to look. We're all overwhelmed. The trusted sources have gone. Where do you look? You look to people that you trust, that you believe in, that seem to talk the truth, and that's why we're all gravitating those in different ways and different levels in all of our lives, and in business and marketing as well. And so, but how can you leverage that? Well, it is something which we're seeing in the B2B Marketing Awards entries that it's increasingly prevalent, and I think that it's about doing it. And I think we'll probably unpack in the next kind of course of this conversation. It's about doing it, structuring it within your campaigns, and understanding the relevance of it at different tiers and different levels. And it's about doing it probably at a more kind of consistent brand level. And it's important, I think, to talk about. Influence for me, or trust rather, has kind of 3 different kind of buckets of individuals you need to be working with. First is thought leaders and thought leadership, right? So you have individuals in your organization that can and possibly potentially are thought leaders, but I believe that what you must do is create a thought leadership strategy rather than have random acts of thought leadership, which might work in some areas like the law, but doesn't work in many others. So if you have a strategy around thought leadership messaging, which simplifies your messaging anyway. So that's the first group. The second group is influencers, who are a broad group of people, and it includes third parties, independent third parties, a bit like you have in the consumer world, but probably a bit more niche in terms of a smaller number of followers, but a deeper resonance with those and much more topic expertise. To individuals within your company as well, the rank and file, the topic experts, the people on the shop floor, all those people are powerful voices, and sometimes the more connected they are what the delivery of the product, the more powerful they are. But the other voice as well in this is customers. And they are very, very powerful, and we all know how powerful the customer voice is, and yet it's always an afterthought in marketing. And often the closest people get to using customers as to build trust is NPS, and that's not very sophisticated at all, as we know. So it's very complicated, and you should be using all these things, and people are starting to go that way, but I really, you need to, we can't push hard enough on this lever. That's
really interesting. I really very interested in those kind of those different dimensions of how trust is built and landed. So Julie, trust is fragile in this world, as Joel's just outlined. How do we create the right conditions to kind of safeguard and protect that authenticity?
I think it's really interesting that trust doesn't necessarily transfer from the real world into social in the same way. So, back in the old days when you'd do a PR campaign and you'd have an expert, but you'd always look for somebody who was quite charismatic, good face for TV. It's similar that how you show up on social is very different. Being able to have that personality, that charisma, but get to the point really quickly and succinctly, that brevity, carries so much more weight than in any other channel. Therefore, I think that really is key to kind of successful campaigns, but selection of talent. And I think I love the summary you put there, Joel. I think now with superpowers, being able to look across that sort of really long buying journey and understand the types of influence that you can turn on at certain points is really key. When you're actually putting an initial list together, absolutely you'd want thought leadership, you'd want things to grab your attention that you trust. When you're back way through the process and you're at that final validation point, then customers, people who've used the service, people who, are really going to help you make that final decision, it's a very different need. And therefore, I think having that strategic approach across the buying journey of what influence you want at what time is really key for brands to consider.
That's really interesting. That actually cues up my next question, which is fantastic. So one of our other episodes of the series actually is all about the power of personalization and how personalization done in a human-centric way can really drive really exciting commercial outcomes. Our latest superpowers data tells us that, of course, B2B marketers see brand awareness as one of the key outcomes that influencer activity can drive. But sales, lead gen, database growth were also quite widely recognized as benefits from influencer activity. So with that, Joel, I'd be really keen to hear, as one of the leading ABM experts in this space, what are your thoughts on the role influencers can play in driving trust and engagement across full funnel personalized activities like ABM?
Well, it's fascinating actually, because I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a specific ABM expert, but I was doing some research again into the B2B Marketing Awards entries, and I was fascinated to understand the overlap between account-based marketing and influencer marketing. And it's really strong, and it does demonstrate that given the nature, particularly I think when you've got a one-to-one or one-to-few campaign where you really, really know the individual, the organisations you're targeting, to enable so you're beyond the brand awareness point. You're inevitably into a more a lower mid-funnel or bottom of funnel activity to engage people and to utilise members of your team, your senior experts, as part of that conversation is tremendously powerful. And we need that. Sales needs to move on. Sales is evolving just as marketing is, and having a richness of engagement at that bottom level is tremendously powerful. So we can see that across the line. Getting people the face time we know is incredibly powerful. The rise in events just this season, just since the summer, I think I've been overworked. I think it's extraordinary and really powerful how much people are going back to events, and therefore having people of influence, people of note to support, whether they're actually advocating for you or just helping you convince someone of the merits of the importance of the investment that you're trying to get them to do, is incredibly powerful. If someone comes to those events, it's because they're sticking their hand up and they're signalling they need to engage. They've gone out of dark mode. They've gone into a buying mode. And that's the case when you're looking to renew customers and you're looking to upsell, because we know how expensive it is when you're trying to, so much of what marketing should be doing is around that expansion, land and expand, and develop your footprint with that organisation. Those people of influence in that conversation are very powerful. Just as we were saying just now, the kind of those employees are tremendously powerful in convincing people to upsell, but also the thought leaders at the top to show the trajectory of the organisation, where you're going, what your thinking is. So yes, at all levels.
That's really interesting. I think one of the questions we get asked a lot when we're talking about influencer is in B2B is measurement, return on investment, and so on. So I'd love to get your thoughts again in this context on how influencer strategies are best measured and tracked.
Yeah, and that was fascinating again, doing some analysis of the B2B Marketing Awards entries, and it did look like, most of the, about half the entries that we got that were using using influencer marketing. This is not just ABM, this is across the piece, right? They were just using kind of engagement metrics. Reasonably, I hasten to use the word facile, but limited in terms of their scope. Only about 30% were drilling down to proper commercial metrics and being able to demonstrate how that campaign really delivered in a commercial context, which is what a B2B marketing really encouraging everyone to think commercially. So it suggests to me there's some work to be done. There's a way forward, and perhaps even more disappointingly still, it was harder for the organisation. There was very little evidence at all of anybody being able to allocate revenue on an influencer by influencer basis, and that might simply be because of the granularity and the different of the individuals who are concerned. It might be if you've got a thought leader, for example, they're probably or a senior executive at an organisation, they're probably bound right up in your thought leadership campaign. It's very hard to separate that person's influence out. Yeah. We're starting to use third-party influencers more and more. And I think this is probably where you need to show the impact more and more. But then it's still hard, right? And then at the bottom of the level, the kind of internal influencers, the people at the coalface, the advocates, it's very hard to do that. It's harder to do that too because they're so granular, and it's probably an advanced stage where people are looking at it. So the short answer is more work to be done.
And I know you obviously do a lot of work in the attention space. So what are your builds on this?
I think it's really interesting when you look at sort of attention economy work that Dentsu's been doing since 2018. And we've managed to establish kind of what the ceilings are by format from an advertising perspective in terms of what you should expect for attention. The only way to go beyond that ceiling is, surprise, surprise, the content that you've put in it and how creative you are. And we know, certainly from the consumer world, that actually influencers hold attention much longer than branded content. And also familiarity of face in a feed gets your attention. The potential then to hold it is incredible. In the B2B space, that's never more so, really. And I think the more you take almost like an ecosystem view, what is the role for advertising? What is the role for different types of influencers in that plan? That's when you can start to drive real effectiveness and efficiency through the plan. Because influencers are not the solution for everything. And actually, if your job is like recall and just saliency, the humble ad does that really well. But if you're following that up then with like different types of content that are all saying similar things, and then bring in your employees who are living that brand, that's when you start to build real trust.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So just moving on a bit. So we've been running Superpowers for the last few years, and there's been one very sort of consistent pattern that we've seen, and that is sadly that B2B buying experiences have not met the expectations of B2B buyers. The good news is that this year that gap has, for the first time, got a bit smaller, which is fantastic. There's some great brands that are really kind of stepping up and really delivering experiences that buyers are looking for. But that gap is still there, right? And that gap needs to continue to close if B2B brands want to continue to be successful. We're also seeing that B2B buyers are stating that when they're consulting influencers, alongside seeking industry expertise, they're also looking to influencers to learn new skills, to connect into new networks, to become part of new, bigger conversations and discussions. So people are looking for much more than just a brand message or a product message. They're looking for personal outcomes as much as they're looking for business outcomes. So Julie, how can influencers help, again, contribute to closing that experience gap by shaping, both the professional and the personal ends of that decision-making spectrum?
Yeah, I think as well, seeing your audience as humans first, and almost like B2B professionals second is really key. And I think influencers do that really well. You see the growth of like health and mental well-being content that influencers are doing, as well as talking about their expertise, because we know that's what the audience wants. It wants what it craves. But anybody going into work, if you've read something or heard something which gives you social currency that day that is totally relevant, it's giving you an insight that you can then talk about and share, that's a huge value. And then you're learning something as well. So brands that have both the ability to deliver that through influencer programs, but also are building sales enablement teams to be curators of that content. So you don't always have to be a creator. If you become the go-to person that's helping people get through that sea of saying, that volume of content, and delivering really relevant content that is helping people learn, get on top of their day job, that's such a valuable source, and again builds that trust that we all want to with clients.
Yeah, I think being encouraging people to be authentic is really powerful in that, isn't it? So because we engage naturally with people who are showing, it's not necessarily showing vulnerability, but you're believable as a human, and you're seeing they're being candid about the challenges and how it impacts them. We don't necessarily need to be kind of breaking down and emotional in our messaging, but at the same time, it does. If you can bring that into your communications as part of your influencer and thought leadership program to a degree, the point is how much it is. That makes it much more powerful potentially, and that's really exciting. The challenge is that. Often, you have thought leadership programs, people who they don't necessarily want to be authenticity, vulnerability. It's hard enough getting them in front of the camera to begin with, let alone the community to act like humans. Yeah. So that's a very big challenge.
And that vulnerability thing is an interesting one. I guess that there's a sort of a generational thing that potentially is connected to that.
Yeah, I think there is. I think we're expectations are shifting constantly. I mean, we're all influenced by mainstream media. It's impossible to have any form of TV program with a reality component that doesn't seek to tell the real life story of the protagonist with a slightly schmaltzier sense of music. And we're all used to that, right? There's no like this person or don't like them and what you've seen. And I think that applies in this world, the personality orientated world. We want to see behind the hood of the public persona that they have and believe they are authentic, believe they have integrity, believe they're worth following, but believe they're also human.
Yeah, there's a real performative aspect of business leadership of all forms now, isn't it? The expectation is that, you want somebody who's got personality, who's going to open up, but has expertise as well. And it's absolutely true of that in terms of who you choose to spend time with on social.
Yeah. And that choice and that choice of brands who becomes who influences on their behalf is a really interesting one. And we're seeing in our data that, of course, industry product experts are the sort of number one category of influencers that people find and consult. Business owners, number two. Number three is employees. So they're the third most consulted influencer group in B2B. And a bit of a double question for both of you here. There's a creation aspect here and an enablement aspect here. We can't just suddenly click our fingers and make everyone a passionate influence and advocate. But so first to you, Julie, what's the right way to leverage employees as influencers, and how might they play a role in, again, kind of closing that experience gap we just talked about?
I think it has to come as well from the brand, and the culture of an organisation. If you haven't got a great culture or you haven't got a clear brand behaviour that is running through your organisation, then suddenly artificially trying to create that through people is never going to work. However, if you have got an army of people who are already posting and making content, being able to support them to make sure that authenticity and that engagement is also helping a business. That's a very sort of different style. We're seeing a lot of a real increase in employee sort of content and organisations looking at how they can kind of facilitate that, encourage it. But again, going back to your point, Joel, it has to be genuine, and you've got to let people do it in their own way. And also don't force people into suddenly becoming content creators. Like I said, the point of curation, giving people the absolute confidence to be able to, look for content and share it in their own way. There's nothing worse as well than seeing an organisation who's clearly sent out some suggested posts across the entire base that all post on LinkedIn and, with a different call to action. It's about, you said, creating a framework where there is freedom within it, I'd say.
Yeah. What are your thoughts in terms? So we've got obviously that great kind of creation and curation opportunity. but then there's sort of there's an enablement and a kind of a operational aspect that sits alongside that.
I mean, the analogy when we were talking before this, and I'm going to give a shout out to Stuart Maister, someone I've known for many, many years, who wrote a book on trust. And his analogy, I did a podcast episode about this, is when you're trying to enable influence across your organization, think jazz, don't think symphony. So you want to give people the opportunity to experiment, to freeform, to do solos around, and then come back to a theme, not to try and orchestrate everything to the nth degree and have everything kind of nailed down with a conductor who's terrifying. So that's what you should be striving to. And I think this is so powerful. I feel like we've been talking about employee engagement in B2B for decades, and it gets pushed to being a nice to have. And this is an example where this is absolutely fundamental. You've got to have your brand sorted out. You've got to have your employee communications. You've got to have people buying into this. They're only when they do that are they going to be anywhere near any good as an advocate. Or otherwise, you actually just want to put the barriers up rather than drop them down. But we don't do that because we know that it's incredibly powerful if you do release it. So giving the opportunity, giving them the reward, giving them the right level of prompting, but also freedom to do things in your own way is really powerful. And so to do all those things. And I think, to your point earlier on, they are talking about your business, whether you like it or not, right? It's a bit like social media. I feel like this is a 20 years ago conversation, right? Social media is already happening out there. You just aren't in control of it. You're not facilitating the dialogue in the right way. So stop denying that it's happening. Facilitate it to happen in the right way and be part of the conversation rather than in denial about it.
Yeah. I think I now actually understand jazz as well. So thanks for that explanation. It's fantastic. It feels like we've only really kind of scratched the surface on this. It feels like this is a kind of a moving conversation that's so exciting to get around. So I'm really grateful for both of your thoughts and time today. Thank you, Julie and Joel, and thank you all for joining us in this episode of Beyond the Index. And look out for more exciting insights from our 2025 B2B Superpowers Index coming very soon. Thank you.